Hello, Yellow Couch Chat family, and welcome back to another episode. I'm delighted today. We've got the wonderful Shalini Bahuguna. She is the UNICEF Country Representative, which means she is leading the overall program in country within the UN system. But there's a lot more to her than just being the country representative, and we're about to find out today. Welcome to the couch, Shalini. How are you?
Asante Sana. Thank you so much for having me, Miranda.
You're very welcome. And I see you're well branded today. And so the UNICEF branding coming through there. So well planned. Karibu Sana. As you well know, the Yellow Couch is where we like to connect with leaders to inspire the younger generation. So maybe we could just start off by understanding, what does your role entail? What does it mean to be a representative within the UN system?
Thank you first, Miranda, for having me. Just delightful to be in such a nice, inspiring, young, happy, happening place. So thank you for that. So as representative of UNICEF here in Tanzania, it just means putting child rights front and center of everything that our stakeholders do. And what do I mean by our stakeholders? I mean government, right? And of course, our civil society partners, academia, organizations such as yourself, the private sector. Right. So putting child rights up front and center in everyone's agenda.
One of the catchphrases that we often hear is leaving no one behind, or leave no one behind. And how does UNICEF contribute to that?
Right. So, I'll give you a concrete example, right? So we helped government set up a system to register births of children under 5. So year 2011, there was no system in place. Today, 2017, we have millions of kids registered as a result of the effort with our partners that we do this. Now that's great. Children in Dar es Salaam, in Mwanza, across the country, right, are being registered. Their births are being registered. But what's happening in the most remote parts of the country? What's happening in the most rural parts of, say, Tanga, for instance? And that's what Leave No One Behind is about, to get to the last first, to try and reach them, because they need the services more than anybody else.
Right.
And that's the focus, be it in education, be it in water sanitation, be it in nutrition, to get to those who are the most adversely impacted, if you like, first.
So finding the most vulnerable and really making sure that their basic needs are taken care of.
Exactly.
And when you look at the portfolio in Tanzania, where are you putting more of your focus? You mentioned a couple of areas, health, nutrition, and education.
Yeah.
What is UNICEF really championing?
Okay, so, like I said, we're a child rights organization, which means the core things that matter for children: health and nutrition, water and sanitation, education, child protection, right? All of these are really, really important if children are to develop fully and achieve their full potential. So on health, I'll give you just the one thing which I think is transformational for this country is community-based health. Right? Primary health care, which is preventive, getting all of that right. The pandemic has shown us why we need to invest at that primary level. And I'm really happy that government and leadership, they're really onto it now. And so if we strengthen the primary healthcare system, we automatically get better care to adolescents, girls, women, especially adolescent pregnant girls, because we don't want teenage girls to be pregnant, right? But also just better care. Right? Primary care. So I'm very passionate about that.
I can tell from the energy. And it's inspiring as well to see somebody so passionate about the work that they do every day. What would you say kind of drives you beyond, I guess, the impact of the work that you're doing?
Okay. So I'm going to say two more things if I go to your question. So, I want to give you another example because I think it really matters. How do we get to meeting the SDG goals, right? So let me give an example of sanitation and hygiene. Using a toilet which is clean, right, and stays clean, and washing hands. How do we make this happen for every household across the country, everywhere? And you know what? In Tanzania, we can do it. We don't have to wait till 2030. There's just that much effort needed. We can do it by 2025. So that's what inspires me. And on the tough things like amending the Law of Knowledge Act so that a girl under 18 is not married off. And there's a fantastic campaign called Binti that not us UNICEF, but partners who are committed to change have invested in. So those are things that inspire me. Those are the things that I think we can make a real change. and, get Tanzania to achieve its full potential through its children.
Absolutely. And they are the future.
Yeah.
And obviously going to transform the country.
Yeah.
Something that you said just resonated with me, particularly around hand washing. And I think one of the success stories within Tanzania was that the hand washing buckets that were mandatory across the country during the pandemic were instrumental in trying to maintain a low rate of COVID transmission. But it is possible, and we're happy to see, organizations like UNICEF working in conjunction with other partners to move things forward. If you're an individual, I'm thinking, if I'm inspired by what UNICEF is doing and I want to contribute, how can I get involved? I actually wanted to tell you a funny story. It might not be funny, but back in the day when I was a child, I used to raise money and I used to buy UNICEF cards. Oh. Do you remember the UNICEF cards? And they were done by artists. And then I used to sell them for profit and then use that money for community projects where I grew up. How can an individual now get involved to either fundraise or to support UNICEF initiatives? Because they're so instrumental.
No, thank you for that question. So I think one is that we believe that every young person can be a child rights advocate, right? So it doesn't have to always be financial. We want you to be the voice of every child. So stand up and say no to corporal punishment. Use your social networks to sign up for the pledge on Binti. Don't attend anybody's marriage if the child is under 18. Simple things, right? Healthy eating, hand washing. Be part of those campaigns. Join us, of course, the UN as a whole and UNICEF on Facebook, Twitter, and there are lots of campaigns that we're doing. We have something called the U Reporters. So young people, signing in and we test ideas with them. We also test with them knowledge, like what do people know, say, about HIV prevention? And that gives us feedback on how we need to change programming or what we need to convey to policymakers. So just whatever you're passionate about when it comes to everything related to children, try and voice that issue, be the change you want to see. And that is the best way you can support UNICEF. Be an advocate for child rights.
Get involved, and that involves, of course, social media as well. How do we use our voice at an individual level? Very powerful stuff.
As always, UN volunteers. So do go to UN volunteers because they'll then filter up. And we've had some amazing UN volunteers come through to us. One of whom I'm delighted to say is now in New York, a really powerful, passionate woman.
Fantastic. I will definitely look her up. I see a lot of UNV work and a lot of posts on Twitter in particular where they seem to be very active here. I want to ask you a question about how you got to where you are. The recruitment side of our business, often people will walk in and say, I really want a job with the UN. We don't really recruit for the UN. However, how did you get to where you are? What was your trajectory to become a representative, which is a very senior role?
So how did I get here? As a kid, I just knew I wanted to have an impact and make change in my community and my society. So everything, like in school, we would have needlework. And I would skip needlework and go to the old people's home. And I convinced the teacher to send me with the older kids to the old people's home because I just knew I want to be in communities and do something different. So it was about volunteering. Then in school, I started this little group of math and English classes for the assistant workers' children who were living on campus. And when I went to college, I did something similar. I started, there are all these exciting societies to do with dramatics and English music and drama. And I started one called the Voluntary Program, where students could sign up and go and work with NGOs on weekends. And I volunteered at a school for disabled kids. So I always knew that this is my line of work. And I fought with my dad, who was a civil servant. And I don't know, those of you who know the Indians know that the Indian civil service is the most premium job. And my parents are very keen. And my parents are very keen I do that because it's, they were giving me really good education. And they felt I should use it for good. And they felt you can, through the civil service, make change at scale. And they were right, but I was young and rebellious. And so I decided to do social work because I thought that would take me to this line of work. And then I joined an NGO soon after. I worked, during social work you get to work, and I worked in a police station with drug addicts. I worked in an urban community center, which was unauthorized, and I set up an early childhood center there in a temple. I was all part of my learning, my college days.
That's what I'm hearing.
I I felt I was growing and thriving in that context. So then I joined an NGO. When I finished my master's, I worked on water and sanitation in remote rural villages. And it was a little project, and it was funded, I think, at the time by the Dutch, and I was part of an NGO, and I worked with the government. Utility doing, putting the hand pumps, and we did all the social side by building a cadre of volunteers across villages. And then my dad's words rang true. And I realized that, what he said about scale, that I can't do it. There are many civil society organizations working on scale and social change through very relevant movements. But I knew that to impact here and now, I have to be part of the system. So then I looked for jobs that gave me a slightly bigger scale, and I found a water sanitation reform program. And this was at the state level. So lifting from the districts at the state level, and I joined it, and I worked with an amazingly charismatic leader for 18 months. And as you do, and as many of you young Tanzanians working in organizations, you'll see lots of Muzungus coming through, writing reports. I also would see this happening, World Bank teams coming every quarter. And I sat one of the women down and I said, what have you learned that allows you to come to my country, tell me things that I can see need changing, but you write it in beautiful language, you've got this analytical construct. What is it? And that's when I learned about development studies. So I had no clue till then, So what I'm saying is curiosity, a desire for change, a desire to do more and to better and at scale is what pushed me. And I then, of course, the minute I heard there's some such thing, I started looking for scholarships. And I did get one, and I went to the UK and I studied development, and then I came and worked with a very interesting organization now. Now it's, it was called Department for International Development, the British Aid Agency. Now it's folded into the Foreign Office, it's Foreign Commonwealth Development. And with them, I worked in India across large poverty reduction programs across the country and also at regional levels. So it gave me that sense of scale. And then I knew I wanted to do more. I worked for 4 years, and then I moved overseas to Indonesia. And then to Afghanistan. And I when I finished in Indonesia, just then I was supposed to return to India, but I read a book on Afghanistan and I fell in love, and I felt I need to go and learn and contribute. And I got, again, I followed my heart.
That's what I'm hearing. It's like a calling. It starts, I guess, any young people that are watching now, what I'm taking from your story is it starts from the genesis. You have to feel it, that you want to serve and you want to contribute and actually want to make that effort outside of the system that you're in. And then also be observant and take in, lessons from around you, like you mentioned, the consultants from World Bank. How do you now work at scale and have a greater impact than you already were?
And that's the, what happened next, I think, is interesting, because I realized that the organization I was with had given me so much. I had learned so much. But then I decided that I needed to get, it was my comfort zone, but I wasn't being pushed. And that's when I decided to join the UN. And I started a journey with UNICEF in Nigeria. And very quickly, as head of technical team, realized that I want to be part of change. And to do that, I have to be in management. So made the leap into management and went to Myanmar as deputy, and then UNICEF Ethiopia as a deputy representative, and I'm here. So I've followed my heart, I've been curious, and I've always wanted to make change happen and be part of that change story. But what I'm enjoying most in the last few years is touching people. And helping people realize their own potential. And that's been amazingly rewarding.
And I think that's something that you get to do as a leader. So trying to nurture people to find their full potential, as you write.
And that's why I'm sitting here with you.
Thank you. That's an incredible compliment. Do you know what? I once brought my CV in a brown envelope to the UNICEF office on BBTT Street when it used to be in town. And this guy was like, no, you're not qualified. I had studied development studies, but I know that it's just really hard to get in. And that's why I really wanted the viewers to know how tough it is, and also what you need to do outside of the UN system before you make your way in. What is next for you, Shalini? Because a lot of people will say, like in Kiswahili would say, umefika. You've arrived. You're at that top spot. So what is next?
So, I just want to go back to your previous question. I do want to tell young people that, be empathetic, be compassionate, but be in touch with your communities. Go and work, roll up your sleeves and work on the ground. Because that connection with your roots, with your reality, and with reality is different from yours, People, like you were saying, where are those who are being left behind? Go there, understand their issues firsthand, and then you will get your own journey. It will open up for you, right? So just be authentic about that. That's what I'd say.
No, that's critical. I hope everyone is listening. This is gold dust, like in terms of advice and what you need to be doing. It's what our country needs. And it will benefit our community.
And Umefika, I really feel that I need to do something different. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and my husband, who's always followed me and made my career choices his priority and shaped his career around mine. And I will be moving on. I've done 3.5 years almost. It's wonderful Tanzania. My heart will stay here, but I will need to move on. And I have applied for a job in the system because it's an internal competitive market. And I have got something. But I am asking myself, should my husband get a job elsewhere? What would I do? I think a part of me wants to be open to learning all over again, something new, something different, challenging myself, and almost like starting from the base again.
100%. So that there's some excitement there in this kind of transitionary phase. You don't know what's next, perhaps, but it's exciting, whatever it is. Something that you mentioned, your support network, and you talked about your partnership, I guess, with your husband and how you've managed to balance that. Any advice for those who are entering new partnerships and still want to both have careers? Anything that you can share with us to make things work smoothly?
One thing I would say is if you have a positive mindset, things work. Also, I felt that I did not keep a definition of what it means to be a mother or what it means to be a family in my mind. I decided that we'll create our own definitions. So who said that mom and dad have to be in the house 24/7 together, right? My husband was overseas a lot. He was coming in and out. We had a routine and we made it work. Every evening, 7 o'clock, we would dial in, and thanks to technology, nighttime routine was always together. It was virtual, sometimes face-to-face, and that's what I would tell young women and young mums in the office as well. You can do it. We just can't have the same definitions that our mothers and grandmothers had, right? Because our world is not their world. So be empowered. I'm not saying you can have everything. Of course it takes a toll, right? What I'm saying is let's create new definitions for ourselves, for happiness, for what it means to be a family, what it means to be a mother. And like they say, it takes a village. So I've used everybody's help. My neighbors, my communities, my aunts, my sister, everyone.
We have to. How can we do it all on our own?
My mother-in-law, they'd help.
Yes.
So, absolutely.
I love what you've said about redefining what it means for you. And as long as you and your partner, your husband or your wife, are in agreement, you make it work.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a partner, then even more you're relying on community systems. You make it work. There is no one definition. You are the best definition.
You are the best definition.
And don't doubt yourself.
Absolutely. And we all do it. We all do it. What would be your kind of final words? What would you like everyone to take away today? You've dropped so many golden nuggets through this conversation that I think people can pick up and apply to their life. What would you like to leave our viewers with today? Final word.
I just say, for me, what's worked is being, that phrase from the Bible, to thyself be true. So being honest with myself, right? And not judging yourself. Don't judge yourself. Don't be your judge, critic, jury in your own head. Tell yourself, have a positive mindset, and be honest about what you want, who you are, without holding yourself back.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Shalini's words of wisdom at the end there. I hope you've enjoyed learning from this wonderful lady as much as I have. Please do hit subscribe and share this episode with somebody who you think could benefit and looks up to somebody like Shalini Bahuguna. Thank you very much for being with us today. It's been lovely.
Thank you.
Santeni, till next time.